Let's kick things off with the biggest one of the weekend, in my opinion, the Grade 2 Tampa Bay Derby down at Tampa Bay Downs. Mile and a 16th on the main track. Let's take a look at the field. 11 of them were signed on. Post-time favorite, Win, stretching out in distance for the first time. Very talented horse from Michael Trombetta. He had to just really answer that question about how far does he really want to go. Outside of him, you had a horse like Dreammaker coming in from the fairgrounds. Visually very impressive, winning his most recent start. The form of that race had come back and looked solid. What would he do here? Well defined. The winner of the local prep, the Sam F. Davis. How would he fare with a likely different pace situation signed on? Well, we found out all of those things relatively quickly. A fresh face ultimately prevailed. Here's the stretch run of the Tampa Bay Derby.
Swings to the center of the racetrack. They're into the stretch. It's still Zenden trying to hang on. Win is way out on the outside. Up on the outside, running is Outshine, now gaining ground, and toward the rail is Lord Dragon. Down to the wire, it's Tacitus going to the front. Tacitus strikes to the lead. Tacitus to win the Tampa Bay Derby. Outshine is their second win.
Tacitus gets the job done for Bill Mott and Jose Ortiz at odds of 8-1, almost 9-1 on the tote board. He finishes ahead of Outshine, who runs second at 6-1, and Win, your post-time favorite at odds of 7-5, rounds out your trifecta. Let's take a look at Tacitus a little bit more. He's 2 of 3 lifetime, just over $250,000 in career earnings, owned and bred by Juddmonte Farms Incorporated in Kentucky, trained by Bill Mott. Ridden victory by Jose Ortiz, and you can see the pedigree at the bottom of the horse card. He is by Tappet out of a first defense mare named Close Hatches. I'm sure many of you remember her successes throughout her racing career, and now she has a very successful son. Tacitus earns a 93 Beyer and a 117 Timeform US rating. Timeform US had the 1/4 and 1/2 mile splits color-coded red, meaning the pace was fast, helping a horse come from off of it, whether it was Tacitus or Win, and perhaps working against horses that were up there forwardly placed, whether it was well-defined sitting in second or the horse cutting out the fractions in Zenden. Also worth noting, Timeform US had the main track at Tampa Bay Downs as slightly speed-friendly, so perhaps that helped carry some horses, but again, I do wonder if this a little bit, does the pace situation mitigate the potentially speed-friendly nature of the racetrack on Saturday afternoon? Some things that you as a handicapper need to decide. I'm very torn on this race as a whole after going back and watching it a few times. Let's begin with the winner, Tacitus. I thought this was a very nice effort. Considering it was his first start since the beginning of November, first time going 2 turns, first time going up against winners in a graded stakes race, first time away from Aqueduct. He had a lot of things that were new to him, and he handled them all very, very well. I had said in the preview edition of this podcast last week that I was unsure if this would be a little bit too much too soon, but perhaps Tacitus was the long-term play. He was the one that maybe you want going forward, maybe not in this race on Saturday. Well, I was wrong there, but I do wonder still if he is the one that you want going forward, just simply because he is lightly raced, he's in good hands, and he looks like he does have some upside. I think he's still on the green side. On the far turn, it just seemed like he was sort of spinning his wheels a little bit till they got to about the quarter pole. Then he started to find his stride, and really, other than that, he had a pretty good trip, though. Split horses down on the inside. Jose Ortiz, after the race, said still a little bit green, kind of pulled himself up when he made the front, but he galloped out very, very well. He seems like a very promising and exciting prospect going forward. I'm unsure what to make of this race as a whole, though, because I see a horse like Outshine, who, sure, he was relatively close to those hot fractions early on. 22-3, 45-4 for a 1/2 mile. And turning for home, he looks like he is in prime position to take this thing over and just absolutely rip everyone's throats out. And instead, he just kind of bounces up and down the lane and somehow still finishes second. He finishes in 31.95. For comparison, of the top 6 finishers, that was the second slowest. The only one that's finished slower than him was Zenden. And I understand perhaps part of that was because he was relatively close to the pace and it took its toll. But so I see that and I go, all right, I don't know what to make of that. Then I see Win, who for the majority of the run I thought was just spinning his wheels. He was out in the clear. I think Irad rode him just fine. You're on arguably the horse to beat based on the numbers and based on the wagering. Last thing you want to do is end up some kind of a terrible trip and X, Y, and Z. If you think you're on the best horse, allow him to have some run. He's trailing behind. Okay, the pace perhaps contributed to that. But then he was just kind of even around the far turn. And I'm looking at it going, all right, well, this isn't going to really work. Then he starts to kind of find his stride turning for home. But then he, as well, is just kind of up and down. But even having said that, sort of up and down, but it's the second fastest or the third fastest come home time in the race. I look at that effort and I go, okay, I don't know if I love that. Wasn't terrible, wasn't offensive, but it wasn't good. And then Zenden is really the one for me that makes this whole thing sort of, maybe not full red flag, but half red flag. Zenden is a horse that the ability is there, the talent is there. But when you went back and watched his most recent start, he didn't change leads. He looked like the distance was not necessarily going to be his friend, the additional distance. Now, you can say that the speed-friendly nature of the track benefited him, but you can't argue that the fast fractions early should have taken a toll on him. And when he's only beaten by, what, maybe 3 lengths, it does make me wonder a little bit about what we saw in the field as a whole. We're not going to know until these horses exit this race and come back in whatever their next start is. And I still, even having some reservations about this field as a whole, I still think Tacitus is a nice horse, and I think the upside there is tremendous. He's the kind of horse that you look at right now and you say, this is a stock that is already high, but it's only going to go higher leading up to his next start, which I'll get to here momentarily. The rest of the field, I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. A horse like Sir Winston, who is just lollygagging at the back of the pack, looks like he's not going to put a dent in this thing. All of a sudden, he just turns it on down the lane and finishes with the flurry. He finishes faster than anyone else in the entire field. Now, he came out of that race up at Aqueduct, the Withers, which, okay, I mean, from a number standpoint here, at an 86 and a 111 time form rating. So I guess he kind of checks out, but again, I'm having a difficult time really looking at this race and falling in love with it as a whole, especially when a horse like Dreammaker, who, look, I was wrong. I liked everything about that. And you look at that Fairgrounds race, visually, I like it. I like the field that he beat based on the numbers, what they came back to do. That he was awful in this race. He never, ever, at any moment, looked like he was going to do any running. Mark Casse has said that they're going to put blinkers on him for his next start. Maybe that'll do the trick. He was goofy with his lead changes off the far turn. I just thought he was terrible. I don't know what to do with a horse like Dreammaker coming out of this. But again, he's another reason that I look at the race as a whole and I'm like, what the hell happened here? Is this going to be a very productive race or is it not? And I wish I had a more definitive feel on it. Maybe you guys do. Let me know beneath the video player on YouTube or at Bernier_Matt. Because again, Tacitus, really like him. Think his prospects are very, very high going forward. The rest of the field, I don't know what to do with them. As far as next starts are concerned, Tacitus, according to Bill Mott, any one of the big three, any one of the 3 big ones for Tacitus, the Wood, the Bluegrass, or the Arkansas Derby. Mott was quoted saying, we might wind up going to Aqueduct because he's already run twice in New York, but we'll see. And you know what? I would have no issue with that. I'd have no issue if they ran this horse anywhere. He has his points. That final race is going to be a means to an end to get him to Kentucky, ready to go. And I say to Kentucky. If they run him in the Bluegrass, obviously he's already in Kentucky. But you get what I'm saying. The interesting thing here is to keep in mind just sort of that trend throughout the years of this Derby point system. The only Kentucky Derby winners have won. Only horses winning their final prep have won the Kentucky Derby, gone on to win it. No one that has run well and won races prior to that final round of 100-point Derby preps, and then let's say they run second or third. None of those second or third place finishers have come back to then win the Kentucky Derby. You've basically needed to win one of those final, 5, 6 races? If you don't, realistically, based on this, and I know it's a relatively small sample, only 6, 7 years that this thing's been in, or 8 years, however long it's been, but it is what it is. If you haven't won one of those final preps, you have not been able to go on and win the Kentucky Derby. We'll find out how this horse, Tacitus, moves forward. Outshine for Pletcher. The Wood is apparently his most likely next starting off point. And really, when you look at the race as a whole, it's not a terrible race, relatively close to the hot pace. But boy, I wanted to see some better finish than what we saw in this spot. he's one I'm going to keep an eye on going forward, but I a little wishy-washy on that as a whole. And as far as win-win-win is concerned, Michael Trombetta afterward quoted saying, "I have to think about the wood or the bluegrass is next, but let's get him settled back here and see how he does." He's one that I still have a sneaky feeling is a one-turn horse, but he ran well enough in here that you owe it to yourself. Again, the connections, you're this far along. Take one more chance. I get it, totally. May not have been a great effort, but take one more chance. If it doesn't work, then you have the Pat Day Mile. Then you have the Woody Stevens and all those races going forward. So this race as a whole, I don't really know what to do with it right now. I will say, though, Tacitus, I thought he'd be the one you want long-term. I didn't think he was the one you wanted on Saturday. I was wrong. I like Dreammaker. He was up the track. He never did any running. Tacitus, nice effort here. Certainly something you can build upon, and he's got beautiful connections all around. This is an interesting prospect going forward. Tacitus wins the Tampa Bay Derby with a 93 buyer and a 117 Timeform US rating.